stay employable in the AI era.
So either you're going to end up working at McDonald's or you're going to be able to upgrade and do some more cognitive job.
Elon Musk envisions a future where AI could potentially replace all jobs.
What they don't tell you is that there's not enough good jobs for everyone.
Don't be a dinosaur.
And by then the person is going to start sweating like buckets. And
AI is not going to be implemented right away. Companies are slow in implementing anything.
There's a lot of money to be made.
You have a window of opportunity.
A threat is an opportunity that someone else seized before you.
That type of a job is going to be defensible longer.
You become, in fact, a disruptor, and that's what all companies are trying to do.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Robert Macheko, co-founder of the INSEAD AI community. I'm joined by Ashley Recanati, an INSEAD alum with roots in the US and Europe, currently based in China. Ash is the author of AI Battle Royale, a book exploring strategies to stay employable in the AI era. Today's discussion aims to enlighten and empower us to excel in this transformative era. OpenAI's Sam Altman is optimistic about AI in the labor market, foreseeing it as a powerful tool for humanity. Contrastingly, Elon Musk envisions a future where AI could potentially replace all jobs. How do you perceive AI reshaping the future of work amidst these diverse views?
It's not going to replace all jobs. Okay, let's be clear about that. Obviously, these two people you cite, each of them have vested interest in what happened with ChatGPT, so they're not exactly objective. Personally, I don't really like what they're saying because it might sound different, but to me, it sounds the same. They're both basically saying that there's nothing that you can do about it. The first one says like you don't have to do anything about it because everything will go well, and the second is saying, well, we're all going to lose our jobs and there's nothing much you can do about it. So I kind of resent that because it's very passive, and it's not the message that I think we want to be getting across to people right now. So coming from people people like Sam Altman and Elon Musk, that unfortunately people listen a lot to, I find that that's very damaging. So it's very poisonous. It's toxic, this kind of language. On the contrary, people do need to look out at what's going on, and they need to be aware that there are things that they can do and that they really need to start acting and getting prepared and getting ready, because there are going to be opportunities, but not everyone's going to be able to get them.
Given Altman's perspective of creating new job roles, what strategies would you suggest for individuals to identify and seize these emerging opportunities?
Well, yeah. Again, I mean, for Sam Altman, I mean, the Senate should stop asking him about these things because he's not really well positioned to know about this. He's not an expert on the topic. He works on other things. He's not focused on how AI changes work and what workers should do about it. So if the Senate asks him a question, he's going to answer what his PR prepped them to say. People can get ready for it, and they need to see. So obviously, it's a bit hard to give, like, there's no one silver bullet that can work for everyone. You need to look at what the people are doing. Are they in a manual job? Are they in a cognitive job? Are they using a computer? Are they in a job that involves data? Do they do recurrent tasks? Do they exert a lot of creativity in their work? Do they talk a lot with other people? Are the social interaction come a lot in play? There's a way that they do this in their job. There's like a plasticity to their job, if you wish, and then you can see like, okay, which of these strings should they be working on, because these are things that maybe AI isn't that good at. Then there's some aspects of their job where technology can help them. I prefer to say technology than just AI, because then with AI people get all these fancy ideas and everything, but it's really just technology. And it starts with something as basic as, typing on a keyboard, or learning how to use a tool like Excel or AutoCAD or whatever it is that you use in your line of work, that you could be using in your line of work. And then it goes further with coding and things like this. One of the nice things about the new AI that we have coming out in the past year is, I think we'll talk about that a bit later, but it's in the impacts that it has for AI. It brings a lot of things that before you probably couldn't do unless you're really good at something like coding. It brings this within your grasp now. So you don't have to be a very good coder in order to do a lot of things now.
In your book, you talk about 3 significant tech threats in the workplace: total labor replacement, skill requirement reduction, and job enhancement. Could you talk about those threats and potential impacts?
Sure. That's a really important point, and it's what I was actually just hinting to. before there. So the skill requirement downgrade, this is the idea that basically is something that you did before that required a certain level of expertise no longer requires that expertise. So you were giving a good salary as, for instance, a taxi driver because you knew the city by heart. And now technology like GPS and Uber comes out, and anyone with a car can do the same thing as what you were doing as a taxi driver. So this opens the doors to a lot of people to do this job, driving the car to take someone to a destination. But at the same time, it erodes the skill of taxi drivers. A study has shown that their average income in London has gone down by 10% since the introduction of Uber, ride-sharing platforms. It shows that some of the experts, they lose, their skills are eroded, and there's a devaluation of their skills. That's one of the big threats that we have now with technology like ChatGPT. Now, at the same time, there's other technologies that enhance workers. So I was mentioning about Excel before. You think everyone knows how to use Excel. There's about 1 billion Excel users in the world. On a global workforce, about 3 billion people. So that's like 1/3 of the workforce has a spreadsheet. But there's very different levels of knowledge of how you use it. Some people are very good at stuff, and they can do what takes one person maybe 4 hours. They can do it in like 10 or 15 minutes. They automate it and to a large extent. And you have the same thing going on with Photoshop, with Moldflow, with SolidWorks, with a lot of software. And the difference between software like this and software like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or ChatGPT is that the former, it will take you a very long time to work with it in order to be really good at it. Whereas something like ChatGPT, you can watch a YouTube tutorial and get the hang of it within, a few minutes, and then you can use it. So that's why it's accessible to everyone. It's a democratic tool, a very ergonomic user interface. And that's very different from something like, using these more sophisticated softwares. So the more sophisticated software still require an expertise. And if you're really good at using them, then you're really augmented and you can do the work of a lot of other people to much more efficiently. That's really the difference between the two. So both of them, they complement. These are tools that complement labor, but the impacts that they have can differ significantly. Now, the last one is, because technology obviously keeps on improving, right? So the last one is the point where technology can completely substitute for the job. Yeah, this is the final show, the end of the game. It won't happen at the same time for each job. It depends on jobs. Some jobs have already been fully automated, like a tollway or parking cashier. Some jobs will soon be automated, like a crane operator. There's already automated crane operators and things like this, often monotask jobs, just other types of jobs that can be automated.
What about the middle class in this future scenario? Are we going to have like bipolar world of haves and have-nots, and what does it mean for career progression?
There's different theories out there. We're not going towards massive unemployment so far. What we have seen, though, in the past couple of decades is indeed what you refer to, like this job polarization, where jobs that are what we would refer to as middle-class jobs, which often have to do with recurrent tasks. And these are jobs like office admin jobs, certain sales jobs, but also like jobs in manufacturing, jobs in logistics, jobs in construction. These kind of jobs are threatened, and they've already been decreasing to a large extent. I'm using the US categories for jobs now, but I mean, the category like office and admin jobs, this is the biggest employer in the US still. I think it's around 20 million jobs. It's had the sharpest decline over the past 20 years to, computerization, a bit of outsourcing and all this. Now that the new tools are out, there's still a lot of space to grow, because the difficulty is that the whole way that our society was built and that the companies were built, I think people would be familiar with this. Around a century ago, Ronald Coase came out with this idea of, why does a company exist to begin with? And why do they hire employees? Why do they have a workforce? And he came with the idea of the transactional costs. It's just easier to hire someone and to have them do the job than to each time have to go out on the open market and say, okay, I need someone to do this, and go with giggers. Now it's easier today to use giggers, freelance people, because there's the shared economy. So it makes it easier. But still, we still have employees right now, but they're being threatened now by the freelance. And but the problem with the employees is the reason when you take them inside the company, in order to make it efficient, you give them a job description, which is, usually a bullet points with different tasks that they have to do. And each of these follows a standard operating procedure. So they were made to learn and perform recurrent tasks. And now we need to rewind and undo all of this. And this is really the tough part, which is the most challenging part, both for the company and for the workers, particularly.
For the people listening, what benefits might they have from proactively improving their AI tech skills? For those yet to start, is it too late?
It's never too late. You should always get out there. And on the contrary, I would say for young people, it's really even more important to master these tools. When you start off on a career or when you're looking for a job as a, fresh grad, you can't really just go up to the guys, your boss or the interviewers and tell them like, yeah, you're an expert at managing people or at, marketing or finance. They're going to laugh at you. But if you tell them that you're really good with software and with Python or things like this, then they will actually, it won't be that hard for them to believe you. You can't bluff your way through. You have to be good at it. But what I'm trying to get to is that for the youngsters, this is really one of the key strengths that they have and that people will believe in them, that they could be good at. So they really need to use that. It's one of the rare weapons that you have when you start off in the career. Now, when you're older, when you're more senior, if you have these kind of skills, it's also very, very useful because then you have these IT skills combined with your experience. And that's very, very powerful combination. You don't want to be like the old fart who's like completely doesn't understand any of this stuff. At the least, you want to have the minimum understanding of what these things can and cannot do, a sort of theoretical understanding so that you don't make extravagant demands to your staff. But then as you are in a more senior role position, you don't really have to code yourself. You have people that do this for you. When you look at big organizations, the CEOs and everything, people don't expect that they're, ace programmers. It's not really necessary, right? But they do have to be aware of what these technologies can do so that they can lead their firm forward and on the digitization path, and that they know, okay, which technologies that they should pay heed to and which ones are just a fad or a do, right?
Yeah, when we talked to BCG's Francois Candelon, he said senior managers should have something like an AI driver's license. You don't necessarily have to know how the car exactly works, but you should know if you press the pedal, it goes forward. As you mentioned in the book, Kwangi, the concept of Kwangi, can you tell us its significance, especially in the AI era?
First of all, Guanxi is about, it's a Chinese word that refers to the links and the relations between people that form a web, like a system. So it's about social relationships that you build around, family, friends, in the workplace, suppliers, employees, investors, etc. It's really an important concept when you see like in a group of friends or something, all of the different interactions going on, all of the underlying stuff going on, and all the things that people know and that they see through intuition and that they know about the different Machiavellian kind of things going on, between men and women, between, all these, and the history between people. These are the things that an AI is just not going to be able to grab all this data and make sense of it. First of all, it might not be legal for it to, and, so it won't be able to understand its staff the way that a manager can, or the way that, when you go outside and you need to deal with third parties, with stakeholders and everything. It's not something that AI is good at. But in order for you to be good at it, you need to really exert it. And then the sense that I talk a lot about Guanxi is more like as something that you build. It's really like it's the human capital that you build for the future. The term of Guanxi in China, as you know, there's a lot of big emphasis on giving favors and receiving favors, and they kind of keep track of it, not like, like they don't do this as an accounting practice or something, but there is some sort of invisible, you kind of keep track of, oh yeah, you give this person a favor, later they'll probably give you a favor back or something. So there is this will to go out there and to help other people. And this is something that the INSEAD is really strong on too, that they really emphasize as a community, that people are there to help each other out, and you give first before you receive. So this is also something that is really emphasized in the school. It's also something that's really important because at some point in the life, if you want to go and you want to make a turn towards another direction, or you want to go entrepreneurial or something, and then suddenly you need investors, but you also need like customers, suppliers, employees, vendors, etc. You're going to want to think then like at all those people you knew from before and think like, damn, it's too bad I didn't keep in touch with them, because now that I need them, it's a bit late to just go out and ask for a favor,
And it might be more important in the future. We talked about tech skills, AI skills, that the listeners, that all of us should build these skills. What are other skills that will be more important in this coming period? You talked about versatility, personal branding, creativity. I mean, where can we find moats, personal moats around our work?
This is really like the core topic of the book. So it's not just focusing on the problems, or what we're looking at, really at solutions and pragmatic solutions that you can deploy in the workplace. It all begins really with an introspection of your job, like in the lines of a SWOT analysis, but transposed to the individual. Where are your strengths and your weaknesses compared to AI and other technologies, and how these technologies can encroach on there, and where do you remain resilient? You have to look at this through different lenses. And you just mentioned some of them. So there's the creativity, the versatility, the number of tasks that you have in your job, how you're perceived, and all these actions. And when you look at it, actually, it's very interesting, because the more I was researching this topic, so I've been working on this for about 5 years on this project that culminated with the book. The more I researched it, the more I realized that this whole phenomenon of job disruption is, in fact, very similar to corporate disruption. A lot of the actions, a lot of the measures that you can take are similar to what smart companies do. Things like you mentioned, like the branding, for instance. The branding is something that companies have been doing for close to a century now, because they do this in order to differentiate themselves, right? This is something really important in storytelling and being able to manage your customers. You doing something like customer relationship management. When we talk about Kwangi, that's what it is, really. So it's really just transposing a lot of what successful companies do in order to, what do? They disrupt themselves. They don't wait for the disruption. They hit them head on. They disrupt themselves. So that's what people have to do also. Creativity plays a role in this, but you have to really go in deep into what creativity means. It's not just, creativity doesn't mean you're working in advertising, or you're working as a photographer or something. This creativity is really about problem solving in original ways, and going the extra mile beyond to give something to the customer that they hadn't even thought about, in a way that pleases them, and in a way that can be creative. And how do you be creative? I talk about it in the book, but I mean, there's different things. You have to do something which is audacious, but at the same time, it strikes a chord with them somewhere deep down. There's something in the familiar in there. It can't be too alienating.
You talk about threats to business sectors based on likelihood and impact. So what kind of analysis could listeners take about their business sectors?
I mentioned about this in the book, but I mean, there's different, first of all, you got to look at all the technologies out there. And so we're talking fourth industrial revolution here. So there's not just AI, there's a lot of other technologies. And so there's the technologies, and then there's things like trends also. So there's a trend, like, for instance, the miniaturization trend, which is enabled by Moore's law, which itself is part of the acceleration trend. And this is something that is what, Apple, for instance, saw, okay, computers are going to get smaller and smaller. So what do? We do a smartphone, right? So it wasn't the idea of doing a phone, it was the idea of doing a mini computer. And now the Chinese see that, okay, everyone likes to live in their cars. I mean, Chinese people, they spend a lot of time in their cars. So they didn't go the way of the Americans, thinking, oh, we have to do a hybrid vehicle with an electric motor because that's like better for the environment or something. People are here, they have other preoccupations. They just like to be in their car, to chill in their car. It's a place that they hang out. So what did they do? They brought the computer to the car. Now the Chinese EVs are not about having an electric vehicle. It's about all of the connectivity and all of the sensors and all this stuff that's in the car that just really makes it a smartphone on wheels. And that's how they became super successful. And now they just starting to open this out to the world, and they're dominating. It's because they really caught this trend. So yeah, you need to see the different technologies and the trends coming at you. And then, like you mentioned, you can see this, they're just a very standard model. And when you look, you score it by the probability of it impacting you and what the depth of the impact would be. And then, this gives you a score to see, okay, what should you put your priority on? And this, again, is in a rather defensive kind of aspect. Are you looking at things as a threat? You could also see things as an opportunity if you grab them,
What I got from the book is it's worth that everybody think about their industry and what the new tech coming in is going to do to it, so that you're prepared.
That's as an employee. So the book is really taking the perspective of the employee. I just need to be clear about that. There's a lot of books that exist talking about what companies and CEOs should do to, avoid disruption, or to surf on the digital trend, to leverage big data, to harness all this stuff. There's a lot of books written about that, right? I couldn't find any book that really talks to the employee and explains to them what they can do. And that was kind of a shocking revelation to me. That's why I set on to this project in the first place. So when I talk about the threat of sectorial disruption or corporate disruption, again, it's through the lens of the employee. If as an employee, you see that your company is coming under serious threat, then, you can see, okay, what can you do? But again, as an employee, your actions are probably a bit limited because you're not up there determining the strategy of the company. I talk a little bit about it, but it's not the main theme of the book.
Well, let's stay there for a second on the companies, because you talked about the Chinese EV sector. And basically what they said, well, this threat is coming of this replacement in technology, so let's just go all in. So that's one thing that a company can do. You can also brand up, which I thought was an interesting, branding up was an interesting term that you put in the book. Or, companies might have to pivot to new industries. Can you talk a little bit at the company level, since a lot of the listeners are managers, how to think about things?
They can see, again, a threat is a threat only when you don't, a threat is an opportunity that someone else seized before you. So if you are able to embrace the technology and to make the leap, then it becomes an opportunity, and you become in fact a disruptor, and that's what all companies are trying to do. Another way indeed is that you can find like a refuge kind of area where you can still survive. So I think I mentioned the case of boats, for instance, where people don't travel by boats anymore, so the boat industry kind of like plummeted. But some people, they shipbuilders, they go towards building yachts and stuff like that because rich people still like to have their boats, right? That is one other way to go. Then of course there's the option that you just flee and you go towards another sector. So and this happens a lot. You see it recently with the European company Philips, who was known for making, doing the DVDs and all that. Well, now they're completely sold off all of their production of goods, and they're rebranding themselves as a healthcare company. Well, that's like a big pivotal change, right? We've seen things like this happen before. I mean, like I mentioned, Berkshire Hathaway used to be a textile company. Then they changed, they changed and they went into insurance. Yeah, that's just really like when you abandon a sector, which is like going down in free fall, and you change to do something else. Branding up is like, well, that's kind of like the refuge. Like I mentioned, the case of the yachts, for instance, it's okay, it's the same if you're like in the restaurant business or something, and suddenly you can't compete because these guys are going really big time on the scale using automation. Well, if you brand up and you do like if you have a history and everything, and you can really go up there, if you have the ability to brand up, then you can deliver for a niche population a superior quality product, and then you still might have like human waiters that are there, like advising you about the food to choose and the wine pairing and so on.
For the listeners who are managers, how do they make sure their companies are agile companies instead of the losers? You talked about things like process transformation, experimentation culture, responsible usage, and also collaboration in AI.
That's an interesting point because I see like it's really at the antipodes, right? You have it in one situation, you got the really processed company, which does everything, just trying to make everything the most systematic possible, eliminate all forms of VUCA so that you can have everything very processed, and then you can automate it. You really reduce the weight of the labor in this company. That way you can deliver a product for very cost efficiently. And on the other hand, you're going to have the companies that, like you referred to, the agile companies, where the people are train a lot more is done into the training of the people so that they become a lot more aware of what's going on, of the ins and outs, and they become more, all departments together, right? So and they can work together, and they speak more common language, and there's less silo effects and everything. And in a sense, ChatGPT can even help them too, because ChatGPT can bring down arcane concepts like the jargon of accountants or lawyers or R&D engineers and everything, and it can bring it down into common vernacular that everyone can understand, so that people from different departments can kind of understand what's going on between each other. They're no longer like oh, this department, they have all the knowledge on this, and it's something like you can't understand it or something. So that can help too. But to get back to the agile companies, so that they have a very different kind of culture in there, which is trying to augment the employees and to make them more resilient, but also more flexible, more agile, right? So that if there's changes that happen, they can adapt. But it's going to be a bit more costly for the company to do this compared to the one that really just tries to get rid of all their labor. Now, these are really just the two extremes on the spectrum, right? In the middle, though, I'm afraid that the companies in the middle that go for neither one nor the other option, those are the ones that are going to get hit the hardest, because they're going to have the high cost of their personnel, and they're not going to have the augmented personnel that can adapt. So those companies might just sort of fade away, and we're going to end up with the two extremes. Which one of these two is going to win? I don't know. Again, these are really just the extremes. And even within a company, if you don't have really that strong corporate culture from top to down, you could have in different departments, based on different managerial styles, you could have the two that sort of you can find the two together at different levels of the company, right?
Say you're in a company or an industry that is facing challenges. So it might not exist, or it'll be changed dramatically. What do you do? How do you decide what to do? Do you stay? Do you try to adapt? Or do you flee, seek new opportunities, thinking about your skills and specialization? If you're in such a situation, what should you do?
As an employee, first of all, you need to really see what it is that they're facing. What kind of threat is it? What problem is it that you're facing? Because if the problem is not about the company, but about you and your skills, going to another company is not really going to change anything. If you leave or if you even lose your job because they're like, oh, we can automate it this now, or we only need 3 people. There were before there were 6 people. So, and you're not one of the most tech savvy, so you're not the one that we keep. If you go somewhere else, I mean, the same thing is going to happen over there too. And if it doesn't, then the company that you're in one day or another, they're going to tank because they're not taking the right actions to become more efficient. So they're going to lose the race to the companies that became leaner. You really need to see what the problem is. But if you do have skills, like if you are really someone who is like got this mindset forward looking and you're trying to move things and you're trying to shake things up and everything, but your company is the one that's acting really like an old dinosaur and that's not acknowledging the threats, and you can see that they're really going in the wrong direction and that they won't have time to catch up, then yeah, you can decide to abandon ship. But you got to think about it through really, because I mean, if you look in the past, like in the 20 years ago with the internet revolution, although the internet is different from what it does from AI, obviously, but some companies were a bit slow to catch on to the internet too, right? But that doesn't mean that they're still here today. And just like today, you have companies that are doing lighting and light bulbs and everything. Although the IoT and smart lamps have been out for over a decade now, it just hasn't caught on. So you have to be really sure in your prognostic about the timing. The timing is really important. Perhaps the company will still be able to make it through. See also what it is, the threat. I mean, not all threats are that lethal. I mean, the fax machine when it came out is not something, yeah, it was nice technology, but it didn't destroy everything. But today there's no company today that doesn't have like an internet website, right?
Can you talk a little bit more about the opportunity of, especially the people listening, they can become the change leaders. Companies have been slow to even understand what's going on right now. What's the opportunity for people who are ready to take the lead in this area?
With AI, there's a lot of opportunities, and it's important that you put some order in this, so you got to like categorize this in different levels. Still, one of the main biggest things that people are trying to go towards thanks to AI is for increasing their sales. So it's about better serving the customer, and it's about getting better data on your customers in order to then serve them better. So I have this at the beginning there where you see the definition of intelligence, capturing data from the environment, processing it, and then acting back on the environment. This is what companies do basically when they're getting data from their customers to know them better, customers and prospects, and people who are not their customers yet, doing the segmentation and then doing the targeting and all that, and then giving them the right stuff that is going to resonate with them. This is still one of the main areas of focus, but it's not exclusive to other areas. So other areas, there's internal controls, for instance. So we're using AI now a lot for internal controls, and it's going to be used more and more. More metrics will be deployed in the offices and even in, just like on computers and stuff to see what people are doing, what the workers are doing, to monitor them. And this is being helped now by the whole work from home paradigm. This is giving an impetus for companies to sort of like spy on their staff, basically, except that they do it, with the staff's knowledge. So the staff knows like, okay, from now on, the company knows exactly how much time I'm spending on each of the softwares on the computer, how much time I interact with people on the phone, etc. And this is going to be more and more. You have these devices now, which I'm sure will end up coming out in companies and will be mandatory for people to have, which just monitor everything that you say. So it gives the companies a lot of statistics, in your meeting, how much do you talk versus the customer, what pitch of tone, how do you listen? So many metrics that can come out of these things, and that's going to come in offices. We already have a lot of metrics coming out now. Obviously, this is something not new in the factory. So I'm in the manufacturing sector, and we have a lot of metrics so that each action that an operator has in the workflow is measured. Now this is coming out to the services sector. So for delivery people or for people in the restaurant, when you order something, you order it with an app. It says the exact time that you order it and then the time that the dish arrives. And this is like the kind of metrics that people are being judged on. When you deliver something, it's the same thing. So the apps are making everything more measurable. And so we're all getting all these KPIs, but they're very objective KPIs, but they're going to miss some things too. So there's a bit of humaneness that goes out the door because of this, but that's just the society we're going towards.
The measurability point is a great point that it will have a repercussion in the medium, in the short, medium, and long term, because having the KPIs all written and computerized can make a difference.
It's a huge impact. There's been this sort of fog of war in the offices where people are like, yeah, I come to the office, I do my job. If you're able to squeeze in a few hours and you're able to do your job in 5 hours instead of 8 hours, you don't spend the other 3 hours usually doing other stuff. A lot of people are just going to spend that 3 hours maybe on Facebook or something, and no one will know. This is all about the change, you know. So this is really something, it goes by the name of digital Taylorism, where there's really this applying Taylorism, and not just in the sense of division of labor, but in the sense of all the metrics and everything that go with it to the offices. And that's going to be a really hard pill for a lot of people to swallow.
I found interesting in your book that you suggested that people analyze in detail what they do, their tasks, and look at them if they're repetitive, what's automatable, and so forth. And your advice that I took from the book was to focus on things that are cognitive, where there's a lot of deep thinking, that's not repetitive, a bit more fog of war rather than something you do over and over again, and delegating and automating more routine work. Can you talk more about this approach and how people can actually use it?
I would say for the managers, right? If you want to help your staff, there's different things you can do. Obviously, you can give them this book, you know, the book on, for starters. I mean, Christmas is around the corner, right? So no, you just really you take their job description, you just take their JD, you sit with them, and you're like, okay, we're gonna go through this, and I'm gonna show you like point by point now each of these tasks that you have, you know, and I know as a manager, you can write down on each, suppose they have 5 tasks. So, you know, their first one takes 10% of their time, the second one, 50%, etc. You do each of that, you get to 100%. Then for each task, you say, okay, this task, half of it you can do it within half the time of what it used to take, thanks to the AI now, you know. This one, you can automate it completely. This one, you could reduce the time by 30%. This one, it's going to take the same amount of time. Okay, you get to the end of that and you do your little calculation. And by then the person is going to start, you know, sweating like buckets. And by the time you're done, you're like, okay, see, now we can save half of your time here. It happens in your department. You have like 5 other people doing the same job. What does that mean? That means like we can get rid of already 2 people, maybe 3, you know. What do you do from there, you know? The person has to see. So you, of course, as a worker, you want to do this preemptively before your manager comes over and has the discussion with you, because then you can do the change on your own terms. Luckily, there's this concept out there which goes by the name of exponential gap. And it's the idea that technologies improve like exponentially, but the society and companies and the government, their propensity to adapt to these technologies is more linear. So that leaves a gap between these 2 curves. And there's a gap between basically what technology can do, how many jobs it can automate, and the actual automation of jobs by companies. From the worker perspective, this gap is like a window of opportunity that you can grasp in order to clean up your room before, you know, your company snoops in. And you can become super efficient by doing the kind of things that Robert was just alluding to. So yeah, I talk about, yeah, looking at all your tasks and their level of recurrence and how they could be replaceable and everything, and then just trying to automate the tasks that you have that are the most recurrent so that you can free up some time to do more meaningful stuff. And then you can look back at what you've been doing, you know, the past year or two, when you had problems that you were unable to solve, and you had to, because they kind of like, they were above your pay grade, as you would say, or they were like just not written in the script. Then you had to call up your, you know, what did you do back then? Did you try and figure things out yourself? Did you go on the internet? Did you search yourself for something for solutions? Or did you like just go to your boss and you try and solve the problem with him? When you try to solve the problem with your boss, was he busy, or did he teach you how to do it? Or did he just give you a fish, or did he teach you how to fish, you know? Because these are the kind of things you got to start thinking, you know, you got to try and learn more. You got to grasp more, and you got to get more tasks in your plate. And these tasks better be more cognitive tasks, more problem solving, more connecting the dots, more things that are a bit more complex because they involve a lot of ins and outs, things that an AI cannot put under a common denominator. You know, it's not just quantifiable stuff in a close space of perfect information, right? So yeah, that's what workers got to do. And I think that managers can kind of help them to develop the sensibility, because again, when you go down through them, when you take their job description and you go down and you walk them through it, you know, you're not doing this as a punishment to them. You know, you have to be really clear with them. Look, you got to tell them, like, look, man, what we're doing here, it's not just this company. If you go somewhere else, you're gonna be facing the same issue. So you got to upgrade, and you got to do it now fast, because the jobs in the middle, these kind of jobs, they're disappearing. So either you're going to end up working in a McDonald's, or you're going to be able to upgrade and do some more cognitive job. What they don't tell you out there, and this is again, you know, what they don't tell you, is that there's not enough good jobs for everyone. There's going to be a battle to have those nice, good jobs. It's the title of the book, you know, AI Battle Royale, is the idea that not everyone is going to make it up there. So you're going to either go up, or you're going to go down with the rest and end up at the base of the pyramid. And as the base of the pyramid gets really crowded, it's going to drag salaries even further down. And if salaries can't be dragged further down because of minimum wages or things like this, then they can be shifted to other countries.
Just to summarize how I've understood some things about tasks, you said if you are doing like one thing, a monotask job, and it's automatable, run. You have to start looking at focusing on things that require some deep thinking, where it's not so obvious, where it's not so repetitive. That type of a job is going to be defensible longer. AI is not going to be implemented right away. Companies are slow in implementing anything. You have a window of opportunity, but if you're in that monotask job, run. Second thing, and this is from Fabio at a personal level, similar point, don't be a dinosaur. I mean, get into the stuff you really understand and go deep. At a company level, if you're in a company that looks like it's going to be a dinosaur, you can run. Or, especially this group can be the change agents to actually turn those companies around. Is that an okay summary?
Sure.
Big Four business relies on tax and audit compliance. They hire many juniors to execute profitably. How do you think of Big Four competing, collaborating with AI-based software as a service as what will junior people do?
Yeah, there's a lot that's one of the areas which is going to be shaken a lot. Obviously, there's a lot going on there. You got to look at the software in question though. So the software, it's been deployed in different phases. We had the ERPs that for like 30 years, 20 years now, and a lot of there was a big rush at the time for companies to deploy these ERPs. And so and then CRMs and everything. So people did it really like head down. They just rushed to deploy these things, and they didn't really look at things like the interoperability of these systems. So now you have all these different systems that don't necessarily communicate, and you need people to take the information from here, put it on a spreadsheet, move it to there and everything. So these are the kind of like wrinkles right now in the system, which will be ironed out little by little. If you're one of those people just moving information, moving data from here to there, it's a perilous area. Now, for the tax advisors, for junior people in there, I'd have to check the statistics on how that moved. If for me, I think there was the type of job that is probably a bit similar to that people have always been saying is like a job that's going to go down the hill is the job of paralegals. That's like a recurrent theme. If you read any book, that's paralegals is a job that's going to go. We're not going to need those anymore. But so far until 2022, if you look at the statistics every year on year, the number of paralegals in the United States is just increasing. So, I'm not saying this could change, obviously, at some point, and I think it's one of the jobs that's radically going to change, but it's so far that hasn't shown itself. Now, what you need to look at, we haven't talked about this, is I think people need to reason less for the future, and for young people especially. You got to reason less in terms of jobs, because a lot of jobs aren't going to be here anymore, and even the ones that are here, they're going to mean something completely different from what they mean today. Just as if you're today like a marketing expert, it's not the same thing as marketing 30 years ago. Now marketing uses a lot more data, like big data, than it did before. There's a morphing happening of jobs, whether it changes names or not. So you got to really focus more and not define yourself based on a job, or not search for a job, but define yourself. So don't think of yourself like, oh, I'm an accountant, or I'm trying to go towards accounting. Look at what it is that you're good at and what it is that you like. And usually it's going to be quite similar. Like you like working with data, or you like more working with people. What do you enjoy more? You like being on your computer all day long? You prefer being with people all day long? What kind of communicator are you? What do you like to do as a passion? Or do you prefer more private life, or you mix the two together? Are you more perfectionist, or are you more like, you just try and make it work first, and then you reiterate and everything until you get something, the proof of concept that works, and then you go move forward. You have to really look at all this. You have to really know yourself better to see all these things, and that's really hard to do. And that's just the first half. The next half then is, once you have all these skills set, and unfortunately the education system and the society doesn't help you to do this introspection, but you need to do this. And then once you know all this stuff, then the second half is you need to see, where can this be applied? What kind of jobs can this translate into? And it can be some really weird things, and when you read there's these books, about how you rebrand yourself and everything, and they show all these really interesting cases about people who are doing something and then they just changed to something very different, but they were able to keep the skills that they had and like weave a thread with that to make it a compelling story that convinced people to get them on another job. So yeah, but you really need to look at that, and you have to dissociate yourself from this concept of like, I am a job or something.
Can you give some concrete examples about increasing your productivity with AI, rather from the point of view of an INSEAD MBA business person rather than a blue collar point of view?
Yeah, all the time. It can help for a lot of things. Just last week, one of my staff in the front office, they came to me with the really desperate eyes, and they're like, okay, there's a law that we were not that aware of that we need to keep. I can't say exactly what it was. Let's just suppose for the sake of argumentation that we need all customer POs for the past 3 years stored in one location in a database in France, and we didn't have that. And so it's all in emails. So we have 3 years of emails to go through now with a lot of customer purchase orders. So I say, okay, well, how many orders are we talking about? Let's go see. We check the ERP, we dial them out. Okay, there's 10,000. Let's suppose it's a minute to get one. That's 10,000 minutes. I was like, okay, stop. You're going to do this job. It would take like 3 months of work full time to do this, and you don't have full time to do this. So I know that they can't do this. So I spent a little time that evening with ChatGPT, and I asked, can you code this out for me? I need to get all the emails, and I need to get whether the PO number was be in the email title or in a PDF attached in the email. And it took a few times to go through this. And of course, I was able to get it in the end, but the other staff, like, they don't have the sufficient knowledge of coding in order to do this. And I'm not an expert coder, but I could do this because I do have some knowledge. I know that kind of question to ask and what parts of the code mean and how to customize some parts to make it adapted to what I need to do. And I know how to create a playground to test it in a test environment in order to make sure that it works and that it does copy the files on the folder and things like this. So a job that would have been like mission impossible, we were able to do it within an evening, just pressing on the button. And the next morning we came back and it was 80% okay. Then we still had a few emails to go and recover, but it did the big part of the job. So I'll also be careful. Like, don't always try to go for full automation. Sometimes you can do 50 or 80% automation with sometimes with Excel formulas or what, or it's good enough, right? There are concrete examples. Other types of case that we have in our industry, there's a few industries like this where it's not about AI taking over jobs. It's the problem that we don't have enough people to do these jobs in the first place. So we make very technical products. I don't have any here with me, but we make very technical products for measuring things in clean rooms. And there are a lot of different types, and there's a lot of different applications, and there's a lot of different requirements, and it's extremely technical. So it's very hard to have someone within our company that can answer the phone to customers and guide them to exactly the type of instrument that they need for their environments. So it takes around 6 months to train someone to do this. And then once that person is ready, they have this great expertise that is useless if they go anywhere else. So it's not something very sexy. And this is the kind of area where having a chatbot using large language model, using pre-generated transformer, it can be very compelling to have this. This is something that we really want to go towards, not for the customer to have directly. You wouldn't want the customer to have the hassle of interacting with the chatbot today because they don't really like doing that, but for our staff to have, so that our staff can be augmented by this chatbot and helped in order to give them a good response at the first stage. Then we can see this could be a pilot program. Then we can see to have it for the customers directly. And this is what a lot of companies are doing now. Schindler and other companies, they're all trying to use large language models and generative AI in this sense in order to give a bot. I think Porsche already has a one that's doing this like as a salesperson. Basically, they're using it as with all the pros and cons of mostly the pros of their cars, to inform customers about this.
There's a specific question about a McKenzie report that highlights different impact by job and industry. Did you see that? Did you have a view on that specific report?
The one about the 300 million jobs, or?
Yes, I think so.
So again, there's 3 billion jobs. So we're talking about 10% of the workforce that with that report. I don't really like this kind of report because they don't give a time frame. I don't believe that they give a time frame to what they were saying. And it was kind of taken out of context because they were saying mostly that it's going to create a lot of beneficial stuff, but they said that out of the existing jobs of today, there's around 300 million that will go out, that will exit. And these type of things often happen. They will list all the jobs. The first report like this, I mentioned in the book, obviously happened 10 years ago. And they said that, we'd have around half the jobs existing today that would be automated within a decade or two. And here we are exactly a decade later. So now the guys who did that report, they're like superstars. You get these reports every year now. Some of them are really interesting because they really show the jobs, and you'll see a lot of these jobs are monotask jobs. A lot of these jobs have to do with computers. So we have jobs like data entry keyer. This is a job in the US, and that's like one of the most highly targeted jobs, and it's been going down a lot. Pay a lot of attention to these kind of reports.
Do you know of any AI courses, master in AI, a boot camp that you would recommend for anything from the technical things like Python or prompting, LangChain, or more business things like redesigning processes, what future organizations look like?
Yeah, for more theoretical knowledge, there's a lot of books about like human AI machine collaboration, and there's books about digital strategies and things like this and how to, be an algorithmic leader and stuff like that. There's a lot of books on this. For courses themselves, there's also a lot of courses. You have the MOOC of the MIT, which is one of the top-notch ones, but it's very high level. And you got to have a good solid background in statistics and probabilities and everything to be able to undertake this. And then you have more easier stuff like the one given by Microsoft and a few other companies. Then you have websites like, Hugging Face, Kaggle, GitHub, and everything, which kind of help you. You can have your own an environment to play with Python and things like this. So they kind of help you little by little to work on this. My advice is not to just try and dive straight to, you don't want to panic and dive into this. You want to look at really what it is that you do, what are the tools that you're currently using in the company, and how could you use them better, and really go from there. You don't want to go the other way around, because you're just going to you're just going to err in the dark and get depressed and fail in the end. You really have to pay attention to how you go. And again, at a certain level in seniority, the ability to be a good manager and to manage other people trumps the ability of using automation tools. The automation tools are more important at the beginning of a career, or tools in general. As you get higher in the corporate ladder, you don't expect people like Warren Buffett to be experts at using Python, right? They don't need to. They have people to do that for them. What you do need to do is have a good look then more on a strategic perspective as, okay, what can these tools do, and what can I do with it, and be surrounded by people who can explain this well, and who, you can connect with, so you have to have the right collaboration in place between people. Like, for instance, if you're like in a company like, I don't know, like Saint-Gobain or Dupont, like, you want to have a good collaboration between the material scientists and the data scientists, that get these people in the same room together, because it's together that you're really going to have the real creative sparks and be able to create something revolutionary with AI that can help you to make new materials and things like this.
Why are we here? Why did you write this book? You have a full-time job already, and how was the process? Was it difficult?
I do have a full-time job. I was reading about future technologies for about a decade now. I noticed that they were all kind of saying, they were all agreeing that there was going to be a big problem on the job market as these technologies advance, and yet I couldn't find a single one that gives advice to employees. And I found that really shocking, kind of like unnerved me to the point where I'm like, okay, like, I want to research this, and what can they do, and it was kind of torturing me, this question, and I couldn't find any answers. So I started writing an article here, an article there, and everything. And then I saw that it's just so deep and so big, and I was interested in this. Obviously, for me, I was passionate about this. It was turning into an obsession. So then I was like, okay, let's just set out and write something about this. And that was around 5 years ago. Yeah, it was a bit challenging to juggle between this and the job and everything. But, there was COVID also happened. So when you're locked in, like we were last year for about over 2 months in Shanghai, that helps too, right? No, but it was a really interesting journey. And the idea was to be able to do something about this void. It was really unbearable for me. So I really wanted to fill in the void. And because I think it's something important to be able to help people and to develop their awareness and to help realize what's happening, and to provide solutions, because there's a lot of books that talk about the problem. I would find a lot of books like Rise of the Robots is one of the famous ones by Martin Ford, and it's a good book. The only solutions he really talks about is universal basic income, and I'm like, well, that's great, but that's the top guys. They'll do it when they feel like it. Meanwhile, what can we do in the workplace?
That is one of the few silver lining of COVID that allow you to write a book on this.
Last question, Ash. Do you have a key message or final thought to inspire our listeners as they think about their careers in the AI world?
For insiders, I wish to hope that they're not the first people targeted, right? I don't think that they're really in the recurrent jobs and everything. I think they're more managing teams that have people that are doing this. So I kind of gave some hints on, what you got to do to set in this mojo in action with, teams, so that they, develop this awareness. But it's also challenging too, because we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, in our existing teams, there are people that we know can grow. You categorize, you got your A players that, can grow. You got your B players that are just, they want to balance with their family life, and they want to stay put, and you're okay with that, because you can't have everyone growing, because again, it's a pyramid, right? So you're okay with that, having people that are just stable. But the problem now is that there's havoc being brought to this. So those people that are just staying stable there, they might end up not being necessary anymore, or maybe only one of them will be necessary instead of three, because I don't believe in full automation. Really, it's too risky now. But so that's really the issue now, is how do you handle this with your team? Then for the insiders, I mean, in terms of business opportunities, this is a period of like great havoc, so it's there's a lot of money to be made, in this confusion like this, so for business people who, they have a disdain for the idle pleasures of life. This is the time where I see a lot of opportunities. You know, while I was researching, I was really focused on this one topic. So that was one of the challenges. I didn't want to get distracted by all of these 1,001 other ethical dilemmas that we have with AI. I try to just focus on the job thing, because that's one of the major problems also. When you see all these talks about AI and work, I see some of these talks, and very soon people, they just go on other topics like, oh, is it better to have closed AI or open AI or things like that? It's like, just it's really irrelevant. Like, as a worker, who cares, right? But no, getting back to the more business aspect of things, like, there's just a lot of tremendous opportunities and things that you can see that are possible to do with this technology now. It's just crazy, and there's a lot of pain points that can be solved. There's a lot of new things that can come out. So you really have to keep an eye open for this, because there's a lot of cool things that you can do with this. And I'm really looking forward personally, although I think it's going to be difficult for the job market, the transitional period. I'm really looking forward to what it's going to be like in 10, 20 years. And again, there's things we didn't talk about today, but I mean, you know, there's also augmented reality. There's a lot of cool technology that's coming out, and that'll take a while to mature, of course, but it could have some interesting, I think it could have some interesting, even positive changes for society. We need to be careful. Like, the concept of work, you know, as an employee is kind of coming under threat now by freelancing, by the shared economy, by all these things. So we have to really be careful moving forward.
Thanks so much, Ash. Thanks for being with us late your time. Everybody, Battle Royale is the book. It's available on Amazon and right now. I've read it, every word of it, and I gained a lot.
Ash convinced me to read the book.